Greetings, my friends. I am General George Washington, the Commander-in-Chief during the American Revolution and the first President of the country. I was born in 1732 to a Virginia planter family and was raised to be an 18th century gentleman. By the age of 16, I joined the Army, and I was serving as a lieutenant colonel in 1754. Here I fought in some of the first skirmishes in what is now known as the French and Indian War. From 1759 to the start of the Revolution, I was managing my own fields near Mount Vernon and serving in the House of Burgesses in my home state. I married the widowed Martha Dandridge Curtis, but just like my fellow planters, I felt that the British were unfairly exploiting and hampering me. On May 1775, I was elected Commander-in-Chief by the Second Continental Congress, and on July 3rd, 1775, I led my country through a revolution. My strategy was to harass the British by falling back slowly and then striking unexpectedly. And on 1781, with aid from our allies from France, I forced British surrender in Yorktown. Although I wanted to retire to my fields in Mount Vernon, my work was far from over. When the Articles of Confederation failed, a new constitution was ratified in 1787, and when it was, the Electoral College elected me President of the United States. Although some wanted me to be a king, even though we had kind of just broke free from a king, I chose not to infringe on the policy-making powers given to Congress by the Constitution, and when war broke out between France and Britain, I chose for America to stay neutral until the country was stronger. I ran for 2 terms and retired after my 2nd term. Although I may have been the first president of the United States, it was the people I led and their descendants who have kept the legacy I started going strong. Please, do not be afraid to vote. It will help you share your voice and help the country I once led.
Salutations. I am Abigail Adams. I was not only an early advocate for women's rights, but I was also a vital confidant and advisor for my husband, John Adams, the nation's 2nd president. I also opposed slavery and supported women's education. My father, Reverend William Smith, was part of a prestigious ministerial community within the Congregational Church. My mother, Elizabeth, was a descendant of the Quincy family. Like most women in my time, I had no formal education, but I did avail myself of my family's library on master subjects. Most women did not even consider that. I even tended to the sick and poor with my mother. In 1764, I married John. We moved to a farm in Braintree, south of Boston, with our 2 beautiful daughters and our 3 sons. After a while, my husband began to travel more frequently, leaving me to manage the farm and business affairs, all while raising children. In my time, it was unconventional for women to own any property rights to anything, but I began to refer to our farm as mine. I even made investment decisions that enhanced our prosperity. After a while, I began to write my husband more often, one of them being the most famous letters of the Founding Fathers, titled, "Remember the Ladies." It also said, "Do not put such unlimited power into the hands of husbands. Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could." I was not the feminist most historians had depicted me to be. I was more concerned about the greater protection of women under the new laws and their access to education. I then allied with Murray Judith's efforts to expand education, because I too saw mothers have a vital role in preparing their sons to be citizens and leaders in the new public. My husband did not take my letter very seriously, though he did ask my opinions on political and other matters. And in 1800, I was the first lady to move into the White House of Washington, D.C., all while it was still under construction. It was hard to manage and move around in certain places, but we were able to work with it. I, Abigail Adams, made proper decisions with leaders of the political place after my husband was no longer president. But sadly, October of 1818, I died of a fever. Thanks to history, my grandson published my letter in 1848.
Hi, I'm Eliza Schuyler Hamilton. Y'all might know me as the wife of Alexander Hamilton. Am I saying that right? I'm not very good at speaking Texan, so am I doing it right? Good. Many of y'all may know my husband as one of the founding fathers of America and one of the guys on the $10 bill. But let me tell you my story. I was born in 1757 in New York, and I grew up with 7 siblings, but I was closest to my older sister Angelica and my little sister Peggy. And I also loved to read and sew, learning to do both from my mom. In 1780, I went to stay with my aunt in New Jersey, where I met Alexander Hamilton. He was one of General Washington's aides back then, and during that time, I also met General Washington's wife, Martha, and we became best friends ever since. I've always considered Martha my ideal of a true woman. But anyway, we started exchanging letters. I hear in your days you guys text. I also hear that apparently messages are sent way faster that way. Lucky. Oh well. Anyway, we fell in love, and by April, we were engaged with my father's blessing, and by December, we were married, and I was anyway, I was married. I helped him with his political career. I helped him with the Federalist Papers and the defense of the Bank of the United States. And we had a happy marriage together. But then, after 17 years of a happy marriage, I found out he cheated on me. I didn't believe it at first, until he admitted it. Now, normal husbands, when they cheat on their wives, they usually confess in private. But, instead he posted the Reynolds pamphlets and told the entire country. And it was bad enough that he cheated on me, but he just had to embarrass himself and me just to protect his political career. Well, I was pretty ticked off about that, so I ditched him and went to live with my parents for a while. And then I had my legally kill each other over something stupid. Hey, I'm getting used to saying y'all. Anyway, that was also the day I vowed revenge. I'm looking at you, Aaron Burr. We may be dead now, but I'll still get him back. You hear that, Burr? Don't think that just because we're dead, I won't be coming for you. I'll take you down. But before I go after Aaron Burr, let me tell you what I did after that. I did what I could to defend my husband from his critics, as well as doing what I could to honor his legacy. I also joined the Society for Widows and Small Children, and later I helped found the Society for Society Asylum for Orphans. And with the help of me and my fellow colleagues, we cared for and educated over 700 children. Well, that's my story. I hope y'all liked it. Now, those of you who are old enough to vote, go vote. If y'all do, y'all might get rid of more stupid laws like dueling. So go vote, and go vote now. Now, if you'll excuse me. Hey, Burr! Come on and fight me, you coward!
Hello and good evening. I'm Aaron Burr. I was born in Newark, New Jersey in 1756. You know, I'm the guy that killed Alexander Hamilton. Let me give you a bit of background. I started out in the military as a volunteer. There, I was credited with the evacuation of the body of General Richard Montgomery after he was killed in an invasion. After this, I decided to join the staff of George Washington, where I was called to New York City. Though Washington and I didn't get along very well, so I left only after a few weeks. I also resigned from the military during this time to go back to school, where I studied law. In doing so, I became one of the most successful attorneys, so much so that I was appointed Attorney General by New York Governor George Clinton. I used this boost in my political career to run for president. I ran 2 times, both to no avail, but my second attempt, I landed a spot as vice president to Thomas Jefferson. And then, on that fateful day, on July 11th, Alexander Hamilton and I met at 10 paces, turned, and fired our weapons. I had shot and killed Alexander Hamilton while I was unharmed. As far as records show, this is the only time a sitting vice president had ever shot and killed someone while still in office. What a way to be remembered. Though, don't let events like this scare you. I'm sure you'll use your better judgment when upcoming elections come.
Good evening. My name is Rachel Jackson. Some of you may know me as the wife of Andrew Jackson, who was the 7th President of the United States. I was born near Pennsylvania County, Virginia on June 15, 1767. My parents were Colonial John Donaldson and Rachel Stockley. I was raised on a plantation in the country, and I never had a formal education, but I knew how to read and write. I was 12 when my family and I packed up and moved to Nashville, Tennessee in April of 1780. But due to threats of attacks by the Native Americans, we moved to Harrodsburg, Kentucky. The 1st of March, 1785, I married a man named Louis Robards when I was 17. Louis was an abusive man, so we separated in 1788 and divorced in 1790. And I moved back to Nashville to live with my mother. There, I met Andrew Jackson. We courted for a while, and in 1791, we got married in Nashville. We were happily married for 2 years before we found out that Louis never finalized the divorce. After finally getting divorced, Andrew and I remarried on January 7th, 1794. Now, let's move along to around 1828. That was when my husband decided he was going to run for president. He was the main founder of the modern Democratic Party, and he was the first person to run as a Democrat. He went up against John Quincy Adams, who was a Republican. I supported my husband throughout his campaign, but soon rumors were spread about me. People found out I was divorced on the counts of adultery, all because I married someone even though I was still married. Many people didn't think I was fit to live in the White House, which, joke's on them, I didn't want to live in that house anyways. Finally, Andrew won the election in a landslide. I was happy for him, but like I said, I didn't want to live in the White House. I told a friend of mine that I'd rather be a doorkeeper in the house of God than live in that palace in Washington. And can you guess what happened next? 3 months before his inauguration, I passed away of a heart attack on December 22nd, 1828. Surprised? Yeah, so was I. I was 61 when I passed away, but at least I lived a long, somewhat happy life.
Kstanton, a leading women's rights advocate and the organizer of the Seneca Falls Convention. Though I'm known for my suffrage efforts, I've also made speeches in support of abolitionism and equal property rights for women. I wrote the Women's Bible, 3 volumes of the history of women's suffrage, and my autobiography, 80 Years and More. In addition, I was one of the founders of the National Women's Suffrage Association. But tonight I'm going to let my ideas speak for themselves and give you the same speech I delivered to the 300 attendees at the Seneca Falls Convention in 1848. Voices are the visitors and advisors of Joan of Arc. Do not voices come to us daily from the haunts of poverty, sorrow, deprivation, and despair? Now, it is time for the women of this country, if they would savor free institutions, to defend the right to buckle on the armor that best resists the keenest weapons of the enemy, contempt and ridicule. We do not expect our path to be strewn with the flowers of popular applause, but over the thorns of bigotry and prejudice will be our way, and our banners will beat the dark storm clouds of the opposition, who have entrenched themselves behind the stormy bulwarks and have fortified their position by every means, holy and unholy. But we will abide by the result. Unmoved, we will bear it aloft. Undauntingly, we will unfurl to the gale, that the electric flash will more clearly show the glorious words inscribed upon it: equality of rights.
Good evening. My name is Susan Brownell Anthony, though many of you just know me as Susan B. Anthony. I was born February 15th, 1820 in Adams, Massachusetts. My father was raised as a Quaker, and at a young age, I was inspired by his belief that everyone was equal in the eyes of God. I grew up with 7 brothers and sisters, many of whom grew up to become activists much like myself. Throughout my life, not only was I an activist for women's rights, I also delivered speeches for temperance, abolition of slavery, rights of labor, and equal pay for work. When I returned home to my family after 10 years of teaching, I met 2 of my father's friends, William Lloyd Garrison and Frederick Douglass. After hearing them speak, I was inspired to become an activist for abolition of slavery. Many people thought it was improper for a woman to give speeches in public, yet I delivered many speeches against slavery. In 1851, I met a woman who I would later become great friends with, and for over 50 years, traveled the country together, fighting for women's rights. That woman was Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Together, we co-founded the American Equal Rights Association, and in 1868, we became editors of the association's newspaper, The Revolution, which helped spread the ideas of equality for women. I began lecturing to raise money to publish the paper and support women's rights, and I gained many supporters in the process. When Congress passed the 14th Amendment in 1868 and the 15th Amendment in 1869, giving African American men the right to vote, Elizabeth and I were furious and opposed legislation because it did not include women. We split from other suffragists and formed the National Women's Suffrage Association. In 1872, I was arrested for voting, tried, and charged $100. This angered suffrage supporters and brought national attention to the suffrage movement. In 1876, I led a protest at the 1876 centennial of our nation's independence. I delivered a speech entitled Declaration of Rights, written by myself, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and another suffragist, Matilda Joslyn Gage. Representation of women has had no place in this nation's thought. Since the incorporation of the original 13 states, 24 have been admitted to the Union, not one of which has recognized women's right of self-government. On this birthday of our national liberties, July 4th, 1876, Colorado, like all her elder sisters, comes into the Union with the invidious word male in her constitution. Woman finds a political master in her father, husband, brother, son. The aristocracies of the old world are based upon birth, wealth, refinement, education, nobility, brave deeds of chivalry. In this nation, on sex alone, exalting brute force above moral power, vice above virtue, ignorance above education, and the son above the mother who bore him. We ask of our rulers at this hour, no special favors, no special privileges, no special legislation. We ask justice, we ask equality. We ask that all the civil and political rights that belong to citizens of these United States be guaranteed to us and our daughters forever. When I died on March 13th, 1906, at the age of 86 of heart failure and pneumonia, women still had not been granted the right to vote. It wasn't until 14 years later, in 1920, that women gained the right to vote, and all of the hard work of the suffragists only began to pay off. At the time, Native Americans and Asian Americans were not considered citizens in these United States, and therefore were ineligible to vote. However, in 1924, the Indian Citizenship Act was passed, and in 1952, the McCarran-Walter Act was passed. And then, Native Americans and Asian Americans finally gained all of the rights that my fellow suffragists and I had been fighting for decades.
Hello, I am President Theodore Roosevelt. Much has been given to us, and much will rightfully be expected of us. We have duties to ourselves and duties to others, and we can shirk neither. We have become a great nation, forced by its greatness into relations with the other nations of this earth. We must behave as beseems a people with such responsibility. This was a piece of my inauguration speech from 1905, when I had successfully earned the presidency, rather than having inherited it after the untimely assassination of President William McKinley. In my 8 years, I would go on to show that despite being the youngest president in history, the White House needed a little bit of youthful vigor. In my time, I would put forth the domestic program known as the Square Deal, which demanded protection of natural resources, control over corporations, and protection of the consumer. I also put in place the National Reclamation Act, which allowed for the large-scale irrigation of the American West. I even set aside over 200 million acres of land for national parks, reserves, and wildlife refuges. After promising to resign in 1909, I would eventually attempt to run again, as I didn't like the way that my successor, William Taft, had run things in my absence. And so I joined the race for the presidential election of 1912. Unfortunately, during one of my speeches, an attempted assassination would take place. Luckily, the bullet would first pass through my notebook containing my speech before entering my chest. I would very easily complete my hour-long speech and make a very swift recovery. It takes a lot more than that to stop the bull moose. Unfortunately, I would not secure victory and become reelected, but that is all right. As I once said, the credit belongs to the man actually in the arena, he whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood.
Beautiful, our heroes proved in liberating strife. Who more than self?
Many of you may know of me. When you hear my name, you might think of my I Have a Dream speech. But have you ever sat back and wondered, what was the reason I wrote that speech? Some may say, it was during the time when racism was bad and he wanted to speak out. And well, that is a good reason to think of it, but in my speech, I kept making references to the future. I recall stating, I still have a dream. And it is a dream that is deeply rooted in the American dream. A dream is a vision of what is possible. And my American dream did not have my children and my children's children being murdered and treated as if they belong in this nation. My American dream would not be mistaken as a fairy tale, but viewed as a vision of hope, because I still believed in the freedom for this nation was possible. I had already accepted the time that I lived in. I had already experienced racism. I had already experienced feeling less than, but I could not accept my children going through it. I could not accept people in the future continuously having to go through the hardships that I went through. And so on August 26, 1963, I decided to point out the obvious. People weren't happy with how they're being treated. I delivered my speech to empower them to go out and take action. I delivered my speech so they understood, if you believe in the power of God and stand on the promises that he made for you, a change will come. The Bible says in Isaiah 1:17, learn to do good. Seek justice and correct oppression. Now let's examine that further. First, it says, learn to do good. Learning to do good is educating yourself on what doing good is. It's burning down a building doing good. It's treating someone poorly because of the color of their skin doing good. No. Then it says, seek justice. And there's so many ways to seek justice. Marching, protesting, striking, going out and voting for the person that wants to change your world for the better. Surely one man can't do all the good that is needed, but he sure can be the cause of many good effects. Then it says, correct oppression. And you ask me how? Going out and being bold and calling out the oppressor. We went through all these horrific situations for our children of the future. And if you believe things are starting to move backwards, if you think things are starting and have never changed, then you go out and be the change. But do it the right way, because then it will last longer. There can be justice if you believe, but there can be no peace if you perform actions that are not peaceful. Fighting against those who are against you, it is never easy. But nobody said that it could not be done.
Hello, my name is Rosalynn Carter. Some of you may know me, if at all, as the wife and First Lady to President Jimmy Carter. But I am much more than that. I am the founding partner, along with my husband, of the Carter Center, with a mission to wage peace and cure disease and build hope that we would be working toward understanding each other on a deeper level than basic emotions or labels. As First Lady, there were many options on what areas I would like to contribute to. I took a strong interest in programs to aid mental health, the community, and the elderly. From 1977 to 1978, honorary chairperson of the President's Commission on Mental Health. The study we began in 1977 convinced members of the President's Commission that many Americans still did not have access to mental health care of high quality and at a reasonable cost. And for many, this was because of where they lived, which was mostly rural areas. For others, it was because of who they were, their race or age or sex. Children were neglected to a large extent, along with the elderly. For others still, it was because of their particular disability or economic circumstance. Our commissions presented to the President recommendations that would make possible adequate care for all persons that needed help. Legislation was drawn up, and I worked with the Cabinet Secretaries in writing it. In 1980, the Mental Health Systems Act became law. After returning home from my husband's presidency, I wrote my autobiography, First Lady from Plains, published in 1984. I am currently the vice chair of the Carter Center in Atlanta, founded in 1982, to promote peace and human rights worldwide. At the center, I lead a program to diminish stigma against mental illness and to provide greater access to mental health care. I am also a partner with the ex-president in projects to resolve conflict, promote human rights, improve global health, and help build democracy in 65 other countries. In 1999, then President Bill Clinton presented my husband and me with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, our country's highest civilian honor. He said we had done more good for more people in more places than any other couple on earth. To this day, my husband and I are trying to preserve and ensure that the nation's people are being cared for in the best way possible and being given the treatment they deserve. Because I think that mental illness and mental health are topics that should concern us all, professional and layperson. And so for this reason, I'm urging you to vote. Vote for someone who will make this world a better place, and not just for those that can afford it, but for everyone.
Good evening. My name is John Lewis, and I am from Alabama. I was an American statesman, and I also served as a civil rights leader in the United States House of Representatives from 1987 until I died this year of battling pancreatic cancer. I want to remind you of the speech that I gave in 1963. We've marched today for jobs and freedom, for we have nothing to be proud of. For hundreds and thousands of our brothers are not here. They're receiving starvational wages or no wages at all. While we stand here today, there are sharecroppers in the Delta of Mississippi who work out in the fields for less than $3 a day, 12 hours a day. While we stand here today, there are students in jail for trumped up charges. We come here today with a great sense of misgiving. Yes, it is true, we support the Administration Bill of Rights. We support it with great reservation, however. Unless Title E is put in this bill, there is nothing to protect the young children and elderly women from fire hoses and police dogs while engaging in peaceful demonstration. There's nothing to help the black people who want to vote inside the land of Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. One man, one vote is an African cry. It must be ours too. It must be ours.
Hello, my name is Michelle Obama. Many of you might know me as Barack Obama's wife, or you might know me as the first African-American First Lady, or you might know me as the woman who took away all of your favorite snacks in school. But today I want you to look at me as a friend, simply coming to you and giving you words of advice and encouragement. At one point in my life, I didn't have a voice. I realized people didn't care what a little black girl from Chicago had to say. Women, especially black women, weren't valued for anything. But I did not let that stop me from doing what I wanted to do in my lifetime. Because before anything, I was a black girl who loved to learn. I was passionate about law. I was passionate about people's rights. And becoming a mother caused me to be passionate about the youth of this country. At some point, I had to accept that even though people around me did not care about what I had to say, I spoke up anyways. I did it because I had to stand strong in who I am. The road was not easy. People gave me dirty looks. People told me that I would not make it in the law world. And I had people criticize every little thing I did because of the color of my skin. I am human. Those negative situations hurt. But as you heard me say before, when they go low, we go high. And choosing to go high when they go low shows strength and power within you. Using your voice is a powerful tool. Using your voice in all ways shows significant power. Voting helps keep you involved of letting your voice be heard. People from our past have worked hard to get us to this moment that we are in today. Growth has occurred and it's our job to keep evolving into a country that is truly one. Everyone, please vote.
Ladies and gentlemen, I need to make just two announcements, if I may. My name is Shelley O'Neill. I'm so blessed to get to be the theater director here. And one thing that I failed to put in the program, which was a terrible oversight, is that the students, each of the actors, created their own monologues. I didn't have anything to do with them. I helped them shape them a little bit, but they shaped them on their own, and they've continued to work on them throughout the rehearsal process. And so, mea culpa. I certainly should have put that in the program. Also, if you would like to see the actors, they are right now they're heading, I think, outside. They will not meet you in the lobby as they normally do, but they will be on the sidewalk outside where there's plenty of air for everybody to be safe. Thank you so much for coming, and we hope you have a pleasant evening. Thank you.